It's 1918, and this man is about to make yet another dangerous flight behind enemy lines in France. The average life expectancy of a pilot in the First World War is just 11 days. Flying officer William Earl Johns knows the risks. Nonetheless, he will take to the skies once more. W.E. Johns is a legend. Born in Hertfordshire and raised in Norfolk, although not a fighter pilot, his life was just as risky as a bomber pilot and instructor. He once crashed 3 planes in 3 consecutive days, and in 1918 was shot down and captured. But he used his experiences in the First World War to create the most legendary aviation hero of all time, James Bigglesworth. Biggles. The adventures of Biggles, Algy, Ginger and Bertie captured children's imaginations. Many chose a career in aviation after reading of Biggles' heroics. W.E. Johns wrote more than 100 books about his fictional aviator and was halfway through a novel when he died in 1968.
Biggles, I think, inspired a whole generation of people to take an interest in flying, and many of those people then went through to learn to fly themselves. And certainly from the 1920s and the 1930s, we got the cadre of pilots that became the Battle of Britain pilots. They became the dam busters. They became the people who won the Second World War. Then in the 1950s and the 1960s, Biggles still managed to inspire people to fly. And if you fly on an EasyJet or a British Airways flight, the chances are the people on the flight deck, they got inspired to take an interest in aviation, thanks to good old Biggles. W.E. Johns must have had a wealth of experience, both first and second hand, to write from. In 1918, he himself went out to France, flew with a frontline bomber squadron on de Havilland 4s, and really did taste the action for himself. So he had all that to fall back on. And he was a natural storyteller. He was a man who could actually spin a yarn and took great delight in actually finding the funny sides of a story to tell.
Fog, mist, and still more mist. Biggles crouched lower in his cockpit as the white vapour swirled aft. At 500 feet, the ground was completely hidden from view, but a glance at the compass told him he was heading towards the French coast.
The Biggles books were a huge hit all over the world, and in the 1960s, Hollywood beckoned. Biggles would be on the big screen, and 2 men from Northamptonshire were chosen to make him fly.
Well, my brother Charles and I were asked to design and build a BE-2C biplane, World War I biplane, which was over a very short period of time, only 13 weeks. This was for Universal Films, who were making a film on Biggles. It was to be called Biggles Sweeps the Skies. When my brother Charles first came round and said, we've got to build a BE-2C, I assumed it was a radio control model, not a full-size one. And overnight I suddenly became, instead of a model designer and builder, a full-size aircraft designer.
The test flight took place here at Sywell Aerodrome in Northamptonshire. It was a success. It looked as though every schoolboy's hero of the skies was about to hit the silver screen in his replica BE-2C.
Biggles, clad in a leather coat, made his way towards the hangars. In his pockets, he carried written orders to strafe the Dunevale balloon.
This is one of the only copies of the film script that exists, the script that was to put Biggles on the big screen.
It was never finished, unfortunately, because the other company that were producing replicas didn't complete their aircraft on time. We did, fortunately, but it was due to be filmed in Tunisia, and as a result of the next boat being delayed, it would have been too hot in Tunisia to do the flying, and so it was never made. And the aeroplane was sold privately to America, the BE-2C.
Charles Boddington never got to fly the biplane again. In the 70s, while filming another war movie, the man who tried to bring Biggles' aircraft to the silver screen was killed in an air crash. The plane, which should have brought Biggles to cinema audiences, crashed in Wisconsin in 1977. The remains of the aircraft disappeared, but in the true spirit of Biggles, it certainly wasn't the end.
My father really inspired me to fly. It was really in the blood from an early age. My father did a lot of flying, a lot of film flying, and at the age of 1, I actually flew from this airfield here on my father's lap. So from that point, I've always wanted to fly. Now I'm very lucky. I'm in the enviable position that I actually get paid to play with old aeroplanes. I maintain them, we rebuild them and fly them. So we spend our days playing with vintage aeroplanes.
But where was that one vintage plane his father had built? A tip-off led to New York State. Hidden in a barn in a town called Rhinebeck, there she was, Biggles Biplane. An emotional moment for Matthew Boddington.
Funny feeling, really. Bearing in mind the only pictures I've seen is for Dad sitting in it, doing the first flight. So, yeah, quite emotional. Finally, after all this time, never thought I'd even get to this stage. So to actually be sitting in it, even now, it's quite amazing.
The spirit of Biggles was finally coming home.
Once we got the aeroplane back here, it was all mixed emotions, really. It was a sense of relief, really, that it had got back here, ostensibly in one bit, or as much of one bit as it still was, but also quite emotional that the fact that it was now back here where Dad built it and where it first flew.
Getting Biggles Biplane back here was just half the battle. Now they have to make her fly again.
Biggles lit a cigarette. He eyed the eastern sky anxiously. He breathed a sigh of relief as the musical hum of a Bentley rotary reached his ears and started to walk towards the mess.
My brother Charles would have been tremendously pleased. It brought a lump to the throat, it really did, because of not just my involvement, my brother Charles's involvement. So it meant a lot to see, although it's in a poor state, it meant a lot to see it. And if Charles had been alive, I'm sure he would have considered it a marvellous time.
Biggles is every pilot's sort of figure that inspired them to want to go flying in the first place. I hope by rebuilding the BE-2 Biggles biplane to fly again that we recreate the spirit of Biggles and the Biggles books, and also hopefully have it as a lasting tribute to Biggles, my father, and also the pilots who flew those aeroplanes during the First World War in combat.